Yeah, today's stream is planned to be the Dead Cells skill tier list. I don't really want to say there's a specific meta in here, but basically we had grenades had fallen. There's not a single grenade over the B tier. Ice changes, so ice grenade, ice armor. And I actually didn't do bad seed. So the new stealth bomb and the mushroom boy, neither of those are included here. And it should be really exciting. I think so. Might be a little controversial. Some of you all might come out of this tier list today with the need to break something. And if you're gonna break something, just pull out the pillows. All right, so first thing on the list, Sinew Slicer. Sinew Slicer previously in the D tier. We did not take Sinew Slicers because even though turrets were actually very good, and they still are, I would say turrets are very strong right now. It may not give you the wave clear that you desperately need. Let's go to a presentation mode. It may not give you like the OP wave clear like a Powerpro Grenade or something like that, but what it does do is it gives you, there we go, took a little while. It gives you consistent damage for bosses and like hallways of a single biome. And a lot of the turrets actually have a pretty short cooldown. So the other thing about 1.9 is that Sinew Slicer actually gets a buff because they buffed bleeding. Bleeding, as you all know, when a monster gets a specific number of stacks, the bleed pops, and then the monster takes like a buttload of damage, but the bleed keeps going. Like, especially with the Sinew Slicer, the bleed doesn't stop. So you can continually get these pimple poppers so long as you keep running the Sinew, which I think makes it actually like a lot better than it used to be. I think Sinew Slicer can still be like not the item you drop. So for example, you're running I'm gonna just make up stuff, throwing knife, bloodthirsty shield, and then the cleaver. Now in all honesty, like that's probably enough to beat the game, like just those 3 items alone. But to add in an additional thing from the Sinew Slicer, I think is perfectly valid. And I think that kind of takes it out of the situational tier, because no matter what you got, if you're going for a bleed setup, you probably don't need to skip the Sinew Slicer anymore. You could have skipped it back in version 1.6 because the bleed was kind of inconsequential. And that's a promotion. That's 2 pay grades above where it used to be. That's big money right there from the Sinew Slicer. I think we're ready to move on to the next, Infantry Grenade. So we put this in a B because in all honesty, grenades were kinda, in my opinion, not that great compared to just taking like any of this stuff up here. And that's like a lot of items to have in the S and A tier. And then I really couldn't decide, like, do I really prefer Powerpro Grenade over Infantry in like 2020? So I think Infantry Grenade is probably not the go-to for the grenade slot. And the reason why is that, think about the monsters you have now. You have rats, you have oven knights, you have oil slicks, the toxic miasma, you have mummies, bats, samurai, all of that stuff. Well, not all of it, but the samurai, the oven knight, the toxic miasma, all don't really care about infantry grenades. The only thing this grenade helps with are the rats, the bats, maybe inquisitors, like things with lower health bars. But for the most part, I don't think you're really taking it. But I don't know if I really want to have it in the D tier. I feel like D tier is like kinda unfortunate, but I don't know like what else I would do with it. Okay, what if you use infantry grenade for like oil? It's basically an oil grenade. You can get the grenade that applies oil on hit, and then you can just have a constant oil application on the boss. But now it's like, or I could just use the oil grenade, which allows me to put oil like all over biomes, and I'm probably running some kind of crit cooldown reduction, and the oil grenade kills stuff. So as of right now, I don't think it's anything above a D, and I'm not putting it in F because it can probably do something. All right, and then the tonic. Why is tonic at the top? Isn't it too early to talk about this? C tier. I think the gin and tonic, the tonic and triple sec, the triple OG tonic in the C tier. So what they did, tonic used to just be a heal and a shield, and then it's no longer usable until you move to the next map. They changed it, so they gave it's almost like a full rework here. It's green only. It gives you damage reduction by itself. If you activate it, which is on a 30-second cooldown, you get half of your missing health as bonus health. And what that looks like is, if you have half a health bar, you'll get like this blue chunk right in front of it. And combine that with reduces damage taken by 20%, it's got enough damage reduction that you can survive hits on any color. And again, I should, give the disclaimer. The Dead Cells tier list is A from my perspective. So it is a VeeDotMe tier list. And B, it is for 4BC+. So 4BC has that malaise mechanic, malaise, whatever you want to call it. And tonic allows you to ignore malaise for 10 seconds. And come to find out, that malaise can actually save you when you eat infected food. So we're talking like, I don't want to call it bloated items. It actually has really good synergies with a lot of weapons that we had no idea about. So first off, and someone did mention in the chat, Spite Sword with the tonic. Remember, you have a blue shield that gives you maximum, like, fake health and damage reduction. So if you get into a boss and you activate the tonic, even if you're not in a boss, you might do this in a normal biome if you don't care about no hits anymore. You can activate the tonic, take a hit, you probably don't go below the blue health bar, and if you do, you can probably rally it off the crits on the Spite Sword. We found out that if you activate the tonic, you get move speed. The very first attack that I'm doing here is a crit. And you can think about, okay, in a biome, let's say you're playing red, and you get Swift Sword, and the Swift Sword looks amazing. It has like crit damage, it has damage up at max health. It might have like apply oil or something crazy on it. You take this, and then you take tonic. You always have the speed buff. You get Instincto, so you have cooldown reduction on your crits, and then you just spam the tonic as much as possible. Hand of the King, you want to crit as best as you can, you just can't, because you have a Swift Sword. But if you took a tonic, even if it's green, doesn't matter. You take tonic, all of a sudden you can crit. And like high level green tonics do extra stuff like bleeding when it expires, oil that burns, all kinds of stuff like that. So it becomes actually a really good weapon off color. Being able to eat uninfected food is like, it's pretty decent. I'm gonna leave it there. Very bloated item. Not to say it needs to be nerfed. Motion Twin, Evil Empire, if you're out there, mute the stream. Don't listen to this part. All I'm saying is it does a lot, and perhaps that's willing to make it an S. Wolf Trap, we also used to say the same thing about Wolf Trap. And because of that, it actually landed in the S tier back in the day. What Wolf Trap did is it gave you, well, so I guess I'll read it first. So it roots 2 enemies. They take damage for 5 seconds. Did they remove the bonus damage that you get from Wolf Trap? What I will say is that we were talking about bloat on the weapons. So it was doing a root, and they did have a new damage type in version 1.9 where you deal bonus damage to rooted targets. So that's a new thing. It actually gets in 4BC a lot of different kinds of affixes to it. So you can get poison clouds, you can get spreads oil, you can get burns when it explodes. When the trap is actually down and you roll past the monster that's trapped, it doesn't turn. Like, it has to tunnel forward and it can't hit you while you're behind it. Yeah, so we've used this on bosses too. Concierge, Conjunctivius, Timekeeper. The only thing it can't catch is the Giant, and Hand the King is a little resistant to it. But you can hopefully keep them locked down for a couple of seconds to get that bonus damage. You can confirm it does display damage up regardless of a fix. Thank you, Matt. Much appreciated. All right, but let's keep it going. I can already tell this is gonna be a long one. I gotta definitely up my game. All right, Ice Grenade. Ice Grenade, previously a C tier. I made it a C because there was only really one build that like I had to have Ice Grenade in, and like no other choice, and that was the Scythe. The perfect tick Scythe build to me was Ice Armor, Ice Grenade, and Scythe. And like all you do is you kill with Scythe, and the Ice Grenade is there as a Heart of Ice, damage reduction, and like combo setup, and that was it. So to keep it out of the C tier is kind of tough, because they did give us a new thing, which is the Ice Crossbow. Ice Crossbow got buffed to do that giant laser that kills stuff that's frozen. But I don't know if like that's the build I would take. And if it is, it's only that build. Like, I guess Nutcracker is also a thing, maybe Broadsword, but that's a pretty limited number of builds. I probably would not take Ice Grenades as tactics, because if I'm running some kind of long-range build, I don't think I need a room-wide freeze. If I was playing melee tactics, I don't think I would take, like, let's say Frantic Sword. I don't think I would take the Ice Grenade with a Frantic Sword. Instead, I would take something that's damage, or something with other utility like the Smoke Bomb. It's not a placeholder because I think there's two specific builds that are actually game winning, and that's Ice Grenade with the Ice Crossbow and Ice Grenade with Tick Scythe. Everything else, I think I would replace Ice Grenade with something else. All right, let's go to the Death Orb. I put it in the D tier because when you're thinking survival, good, like survival builds that would probably win a game, I'd say Tick Scythe, Giant Killer, Crossbows, like the Heavy Crossbow, Flawless with Ice Shards. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the builds that I think are game-winning survival builds don't require Death Orb almost at all. So you think about like bosses. Death Orb, the only thing that probably hurts is the Giant's Fist, which when you're playing these survival weapons, I don't really care about the skills as much as actually like attacking with the broadsword or attacking with the flawless. Hand the King, it's okay because he like moves around the map a lot, so maybe he'll get hit by it twice, but I would just take a Crusher, or I would just take a Wolf Trap. Maybe even Giant Whistle might deal more damage consistently than the Death Orb against Hand the King. And then everybody else, Conjunctivius, Timekeeper, Concierge, I actually don't think any of them particularly care. If you can root the enemy in place while Death Orb's active, it's great. But does it like actually deal enough damage compared to Giant Whistle? So I think like Timekeeper, for example, you get the root on Timekeeper, you send the Death Orb through, and it goes through her. Like, would I have just gotten more damage if I had used Giant Whistle instead? Now, what a lot of people say is that, no, V, you don't get it. Let me help you out, V. What you're actually using the Death Orb for is clearing a hallway. Like, I've had so many instances where I just run straight past a Death Orb. I'm using Death Orb with, like, Nutcracker and Ice Grenade, and I have, like, cooldown reduction so I can spam the Death Orb, and I'm using it in Moras, but then I just run right past the Death Orb. I throw the Ice Grenade, kill everything, and I keep going, and the Death Orb's like way back in my rear view mirror. And maybe that's not how you're supposed to play Death Orb. Maybe I am just not qualified to play this thing, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Very good in hallways, surface, and bosses, and against either defender or protectors and flying enemies. I kind of like them for flying enemies, where you can like use the Death Orb, then run forward, and hopefully the bats like swoop into it. But when they don't, and they fly over it, perhaps Powerpro Grenade would have been better. I don't know though. All right, next, Double Crossbow-matic. Previously in A tier. A tier because when it comes to turrets, some turrets were better than others. All turrets were very good, but we couldn't have all of them in the S tier. Someone had to fall down. When it comes to version 1.9, so 1.9, there's been some buffs and some nerfs. We had a buffed Sinew Slicer. We've had slight nerfs to the flamethrower based off the cooldown reduction. Now it's 12 seconds. So let's look at the competition here. Heavy turret remains mostly unchanged. Flamethrower got its duration nerfed a little bit. Cleaver is essentially buffed. Also Crusher is also buffed. Besides Barnacle, Double Crossbow-matic is the only other crossbow that essentially does nothing. And by nothing, like, nothing is kind of a loaded word, because it does stuff. I guess it's not bloated. Like, every other turret does 5 things, whereas Double Crossbow-matic does 1 thing, maybe 2, if you count, like, hitting 2 targets, as it does 2 things. But it's just a Barnacle that hits 2 things. I kind of think it might be a little worse than some other stuff. But my worry is that other stuff is in the S tier. And Heavy Turret has the bonus damage while you're near it, but they also buffed Support mutation. And when you think about having 15% from the Heavy Turret combined with like plus 30% from Support mutation, you can get some like really high numbers from your regular tactics weapon. When you combine that with the Heavy, I want to say it might be better than Double Crossbow-matic. So I'm going to leave it at a B. We may revisit that. Powerpro Grenade. Powerpro Grenade, previously a B. I put it at a B because I really wasn't using Powerpro Grenades anymore. And that's not to say it's bad, it's just that when it comes to like winning a game, I didn't need that as survival. So like a survival Powerpro Grenade to me is probably down here with Death Orb. Brutality, however, it's probably right around here because I think I would take Fire Grenade and Oil Grenade over Powerpro Grenade if I was playing Brutality. It is nice to have a delete button where like you go into this biome and let's say you have a elite golem in front of you. Elite golem while you're playing survival, I would probably use my giant whistle on it. If I'm running Powerpro Grenade, I think I'm also running something like Ice Grenade with it. But then like, I don't know when I would take Powerpro Grenade over Giant Whistle as survival. as Brutality, I think it's a little better. Brutality does still have wave clear to it. It has the knife dance. It has the cluster grenade, which is also like kind of eh. Outside of that, I don't think I'm really taking the Powerpro Grenade. And I also value Teloric Shock over Powerpro Grenade. Thinking about like game-winning builds, like the build that took this game to another level. Powerpro Grenade probably wasn't it, but I don't think it's so bad as a D tier. I think it's good enough in the scenarios that you're supposed to use it, but I think there's still other stuff that's a little better in those scenarios. All right, keeping it going, the Tornado. We had Tornado as an F. Big Fs for Tornado right now, and it hasn't been buffed. 24-second cooldown. It deals like 80 damage going through a target. Sometimes it can hook a target and like push it back, but why I would want to do that is like kind of odd in 4BC, because a lot of monsters will just teleport on top of you. If you push it and it falls off a platform, it just teleports to exactly where you were. A lot of monsters are fast, so when it comes to things like the Oven Knight, you might break the shield and then it gets the rage and then rushes after you. Might be a slasher that would just blink on top of you. Tornado does have the benefit of knocking away enemy attacks. So you think about Hand the King, he does the lob. You use the Tornado, does something. So does Wave of Denial. Wave of Denial does something there too, on a 4-second cooldown. Yeah, you can clear. So if you were running Hunter's Instinct, you were getting back like 2 seconds per rat on a hallway with like 4 rats in it. Actually, no, they nerfed it. They nerfed the Tornado so it doesn't give you Hunter's Instinct anymore, right? Skills, no, yeah, this is it right here. Like, why use it ever? Skills no longer proc rally nor cooldown reduction. So when you're rocking Tornado and it's killing those rats, it's still on a 24-second cooldown. It doesn't even get reduced. So it's gonna be an F for me. I think we've crossed enough stuff off to make it kind of not that great. Heavy turret, previously an A tier, perhaps the first A tier of the night. Heavy turret does like 8 different things. Crowd control because it hits an enemy and stuns it for a little bit. Works on bosses. Mama Tick, heavy turret will interrupt her attacks. Timekeeper, heavy turret does cause her to stutter. What it also does is it increases your damage just by being near it. So it may not do as many things as a wolf trap does, but when you think about tactics and you think about having like these high damage builds, plus 15% on like your already really high damage might be the difference between melt and not melt. Compare that to double crossbow. So this is honestly like, this is the real argument, is these two items versus each other. You would think like at a base they probably are the exact same thing and fill the exact niche. If I had the glass case behind me, I wouldn't mind taking both a double crossbow-matic and a heavy turret. But I think when it came to something like the Giant, Timekeeper, Hand of the King, I feel like I may get more value out of the heavy turret compared to the double crossbow. If you think about Hand of the King, this is like probably the best example I can give. So Hand of the King may actually kill these turrets. They both have the same health bar. So the idea is, if Hand of the King kills the 2 turrets, could I have dealt more damage myself with the 15% compared to the amount of time the double crossbow stayed alive? And yes, you would use support on both of them. And was I in the lab to test this? I will say no. I did not pull up the training dummy and try to do some kind of like super DPS check to see what beats what. But like pen to paper, I feel like I could out damage the double crossbow with almost any tactics build. Like maybe not marksman bow, nerves of steel, maybe the triple knock. All right, cluster grenade, previously a D. D because like it's okay. You throw it, it deals damage. That's awesome. It separates and deals like a couple of splash damage. That's kind of cool. When you think about the current state of monsters, you throw this in Arboretum, you throw this in Corrupted Prison, you throw this in toxic sewers with like bats and stuff like that. You could probably clear some rooms, but this is on a 20-second cooldown. So compare that to Powerpro Grenade. Think about all the scenarios where you had to clear a bunch of stuff. Could you have cleared it with just Powerpro Grenade? I want to say yes. Cluster had like the fantasy where like you can have a monster in a room, maybe close the door behind you. Maybe you're running the new emergency door, the E door. You close it, throw the grenades down, and like it stacks on top of the monster and just blows it up. But I think realistically that never happens. It always spreads out. Like if you're lucky, you're probably gonna land 50 damage per bomb. I'd say you probably land like 3. And could you have done 150 damage with just Powerful Grenade? Absolutely, because it does like 200. The only time I really see this shine is in Forgotten Sepulcher. Forgotten Sepulcher has like tons of monsters and you have no idea where anything is. You just throw a cluster and you pray that it kills whatever's bad out there. And it does. Like it will kill the dark trackers, and it will probably kill inquisitors, but it won't kill a mummy and it won't kill failed experiment. But that at least gives you like some wiggle room on what to fight. But it's brutality, so it's like if I'm playing brutality and like I'm kind of afraid of the monsters, then I probably did something wrong. To combine it, I should say, to make some kind of pro build with like the magnetic or like the door like we said earlier, or maybe you could do something cool with the fans, but I don't think you have enough time. I think it lands, it spreads, and then it explodes on contact. If it spread and then stayed on the ground, and maybe you could like move them around, then sure, that could be something. But that's still kind of gimmicky, and I don't think that's enough to really like win you games. So I'm gonna keep it as a D. It's good enough to clear certain biomes, but I'm getting rid of this as soon as I have some kind of viable build in mind. All right, next, the Knife Dance. And we will catch up the chat a little bit. Let me just put Knife Dance in its place. Knife Dance previously an A tier, and I was really a big fan of Knife Dance. I actually used to think that Knife Dance was probably the second best bleeding application in the game. Basically Cleaver was #1, and then it was Knife Dance, and then it was Sinew Slicer. But in version 1.9, I think the tables have turned a little bit. To use Knife Dance, I would assume I'm running Instincto, or I'm running a shield with Blind Faith. What this is good at is killing stuff in the air and being able to jump onto a target and just activating the L2 button without having like any care about enemies around you. And it still does that, but thinking of like long term, thinking about like a real investment into an in-game strategy that can get you into the higher tiers of Dead Cells PvP, I don't know if the Knife Dance is in there. I would say it's probably better that you take Sinew Slicer over Knife Dance 7 times out of 10. Like, this is probably good if you can find the spread bleed, but this gets it too. And it's probably good in stuff like Graveyard, but this is still good in Graveyard. It does real damage. Like, it can pop a monster, get like a ton of bleeding stacks immediately, but now you're on a cooldown compared to just having Sinew Slicer and Cleaver, which I think are now better bleeding applications. I'd say it's unusable. I'm willing to keep it in the C tier because I think you can take Blind Faith, Heart of Ice, and make a viable Knife Dance build. But if you don't do that, if you just want to play safe, old-fashioned Dead Cells with no spicy mutations, no splashed in stuff, just run Sinew and Cleaver and call it a day. Knife Dance still deletes everything in Biome. Yes, it will, just like a Powerful Grenade, it will delete one instance of monster. But when we talk about long-term strat, Knife Dance is on a 16-second cooldown. It's actually not terrible. It's a little higher than Powerful Grenade, but it's better than Tornado. But I think when it comes to a Brutality build, bosses are probably the issue. And when it comes to tactics builds, I do kind of like that in tactics, to be honest. But right now, I think turrets are really good. All right, moving back up, the Barnacle. Previously a D tier. D because when it comes to Barnacles, it's supposed to be like the premier point and shoot accurate turret. And like, do I need that? I don't think I do. When it comes to, say, Conjunctivius is probably the best example, where like it's in the sky, nothing hits it except my Barnacle. And if I went to Conjunctivius and I said, I can't hit this thing, I'm gonna lose unless I have a Barnacle, I probably screwed up. Hand of the King is another example where you might say, oh, V, this thing, it doesn't die to Hand of the King. It's awesome. You just activate the Barnacle, it stays there, shoots him all day, he can't touch it. And it's like, well, turrets are on very short cooldowns. The only turret that might possibly get killed by Hand of the King and not come back is Explosive Decoy. Everything else doesn't really care if it dies, because it will come back. And then you may say, okay, well, V, the Barnacle, the best part about it is that it's basically like a magic missile. You can shoot anything with it. It doesn't miss. You're talking bats. You're talking bombers in the sky. Shantae. What about Shantae, V? And every turret besides Cleaver and I guess Wolf Trap and Sinew Slicer don't touch Shantae. So that's unfortunate, sure. Hopefully by the time you see the Librarian monster, the Genie, you don't need a Barnacle to kill it because you're playing Tactics. Remember, Tactics only weapon. And you probably have something in the kit that kills flying genies. So I would say Barnacle. I'm gonna keep it as a D. I think it's better than Tornado. I would take it over Tornado any day of the week. Even if I was running like a explosive parting gift build. I think I would still rather have Barnacle in parting gift because Barnacle will hit stuff by like a farther, not really a farther distance than Tornado, but it'll hit stuff that I haven't gotten to yet, drop a bomb, and kill other stuff. But technically all turrets do that, so it's still not enough to carry it up higher. Fire Grenade. As a B tier, I actually think it's better than Powerful, to be perfectly honest. Like, it probably won't one-tap a monster like Powerful Grenade can, but when we talk long-term strategy, when we talk burning oil damage, when we talk about attacking Shantae and still being able to fight everything else that appears on top of you, I think Fire Grenade is probably the right choice. Now, that's not to say Powerful Grenade is bad. Like, you do still take it when you got nothing. But think about, like, Corrupted Prison, where enemies are shielded. What you can do with the Fire Grenade that you can't do with Powerful is you can go up to the Protector, toss a grenade at it. It will kill the Protector, all the shields fall off, but the fire is still there. Powerful Grenade can't do that. Powerful will one-tap the Protector, and now you have no skill to use for everything else. Fire Grenade will instead give you some long-term value that Powerful doesn't have. Is burning oil damage the top dog fix? I like it because it's easy to get oil, in my opinion. The hard part is getting the fire. But a lot of people say you should just down slam, and that, like, I haven't really incorporated that into my gameplay yet. So maybe like people who down slam for fire would move this down to a C and move Powerful up. But I don't. I rather just throw the Fire Grenade and like be fine with that. Corrupted Power, previously a B tier. Corrupted Power has been nerfed. Electricity on Corrupted Power is a lot less common. Back in the day, you used to be able to find electricity on this pretty easily, and activating Corrupted Power with electricity would borderline kill every monster by itself. Except elites. Like, you do have to actually play the game versus elites. But then there is another nerf in that, well, I guess it goes hand in hand with the electricity. So the electricity also powered your Hunter's Instinct, and you will actually reduce the cooldown of your own aura. And that was actually like super good. Good enough to make it a B tier. I didn't have it as an A because I thought that all of this stuff up here is all better than Corrupted Power. But I think after those nerfs, which is really just the electricity nerf, I have to deduct the point for it. I do think as tactics, it's still really decent to build around. I don't think win rate wise, it's like the highest win rate item to choose from as tactics. And as we go through this tier list, it might drop down to a D, not gonna lie. But as Brutality, I think it does kind of do decently, but I think Tonic is probably a better option compared to taking Corrupted Power as red. When it comes to win rate, that is. I feel like you're signing a death warrant whenever you use Corrupted Power. That's why I said when it comes to win rate, you're probably better off with Tonic when you're playing Brutality. If you're playing Tactics, I would say just run a turret plus support plus Tranquilo if you're playing ranged. If you are playing Tactics melee, I would say turret, support, and something like, I really don't want to put this in here. I almost want to say just use double turret if you're playing Tactics, but you could go like Smoke Bomb. I would say the 4,000% bonus hit off the Smoke Bomb is probably better than Corrupted Power. And Smoke Bomb has like utility to it. I don't know. Corrupted Power, I'm going to keep it as a C. If I actually find something that's a little better, I would actually drop this down to a D. Mostly thinking about the win rate. Like, I'd rather you all play something else. But I think it's better than Barnacle. So it's going to be in that C slot. All right, going back up, Flamethrower. S tier Flamethrower. It's been a hot minute before we talked about an S tier item. And this is Bloat. Flame. Poison Cloud. Bonus damage while you're near it. And this is all stuff that all the other turrets do. So when we talk about bosses, we want to talk about every boss in the game this thing can fight except Mama Tick. Mama Tick is the only boss that can defend itself against the Flamethrower. Even Conjunctivious it's giving you value on the tentacles on the floor, compared to taking Barnacle that has, like, to me, almost zero value in Conjunctivious. And then when you get to Hand of the King, attacks him, puts the fire on the ground, he can't go anywhere. The platform's like this big. So having that fire, even after he destroys it, is still really good. So I'm actually gonna keep this as an S. I'd say as a fire brutality weapon, it may be the best fire instigator, fire starter, initiator, flaming initiator, best in class for brutality. I know there's a fire grenade here. I think it's better than fire grenade and brutality. The only thing that this has for it is that it like bursts damage in front of you in like a bigger area, so it kills bats. Normal circumstances where DPS like long term is the measure, you want the flamethrower instead. You would probably see me using these two, and if I have these two, I might skip flamethrower. But if my flamethrower does oil, I'm probably gonna use both, and that to me is probably S rank territory. If like I have enough fire and I still take a flamethrower, like that's kind of ridiculous. All right, moving on. Magneto, previously an F. Oh no, this might be a controversial item right here. And shout outs to everybody out there using magnetic grenades. I know you all are doing it. I have tried my absolute best to use magnetic grenades. I've used it with the Hokuto. I thought that, okay, this is the Exodia build. You throw the magnetic, you hit him with the Hokuto, that first monster gets extra damage taken, and then it like cascades to every other monster as they kill it on a 16-second cooldown that cannot be reduced by Hunter's Instinct. So that's a nerf to Magnetic Grenade. What it does do, it's a new shock DPS item. And when it comes to shock DPS, it's kind of hard to come by. So maybe like comparing to the other shock makers, it might be best in class. Is it an F tier though? I don't think so. I think it can probably be good enough in like a couple of those builds. I would take it over Tornado. I am so sorry to the Tornado. I think Magnetic Grenade actually does everything Tornado does, but better. And it applies shock. So like in the rare circumstance that you want shock in the kit, you at least have an option compared to like nothing at all. So yeah, if you're taking magnetics, please continue to do so. I just think that the only reason you should probably take it is as a shock source. Okay, next on the tier list, the True Blood, Eric Norton himself, or Northman. Crap, you all tell me this every time, but I always forget the dude's last name. But for all my HBO Go subscribers who actually have access to True Blood and paying like $20 a month to do that, Vampirism got reworked. I won't say it's a buff. I won't say it's a nerf. It's a rework. But what it does is it yeets your entire health bar. It just takes it and just beats the crap out of it until it goes to 0. And what you do is that you have this giant rally, what we call it. It's a yellow health, just like in Bloodborne, if you've ever played that, where you deal damage and the yellow bar fills back up. But it's on a timer. So if you don't fill your bar up quickly enough, you actually net 0 on health gain. So then it becomes a matter of, okay, Vamp, the True Blood, Suki Stackhouse herself, I'm using that with the recovery that allows me to not take 2 seconds to get my health back. It gives me 4 seconds. Is it double? I think it's double. It gives me 4 seconds instead of 2. That's busted. And I don't think recovery is what you want. You might say, no, V, you have Vamp, you combine that with the Tonic. And you know Tonic's a busted item. And in that scenario, I actually don't think it's very good because the kind of gameplay you're asking for is almost just Tonic. Like, just play the Tonic by itself. Don't even worry about the Vamp. Like, the Vamp just gives you a way to lose compared to just taking Tonic. So then it becomes, okay, well, V, if you aren't gonna tell us how to get your health back, then you gotta, like, give us something. So we took True Blood, the Vamp, with fast weapons. We thought, okay, I have an X amount of time to get my health back. I want Hayabusa gauntlets. Come to find out, the ideal way to get your health bar back isn't DPS at all. It's like flat damage. So what that means is you pop the Vamp and you have something like Scythe, Broadsword, crits from something like Frantic Sword, big hits from something like the Flint. You want something that deals like a really high amount of damage in as little of strikes as possible. So here's another Vamp. 0 health. We're fighting Rammus, strongest champ in League of Legends right here. Get the first hit, and you can see every chunk sends the bar up. If I had a bigger weapon, if I had like actually survival or something like that, 2 hits from a broadsword would probably put you at a real number. Anything else though, like half the brutality roster, doesn't really give you full value. I'd say 90% of the survival roster will probably give you something, but some are better than others. So like if you took Nutcracker and you just did a standard hit, you're probably gonna net negative. But if you did like Ice Grenade, Vamp, hit with a Nutcracker, you'll probably get back like half the yellow, and just pray that there's another monster there to crit so you can get full value. Someone mentioned Susie earlier. Susie, if you're out there, I think Susie may have blocked us at one point because we told her to, what item did I say? I think I told her to take the ice crossbow and like don't go to Hand of the King with the ice crossbow, like swap off as soon as you can. And I don't think she swapped off. I think she kept it and may have died. So we might be blocked. So I think it's not an F. I will say it's not an F. What I will say is that it's probably not good enough to get your win rate sky high. Someone mentioned earlier it is skill based, which is true. Like in that scenario, I like got really hurt as tactics, and I saw the Vamp and I was like, I actually think I'm supposed to take this just to get my health back, and then we're gonna like leave the Vamp on the ground and that's it. And technically that's how Vamp used to work back in the day, but I decided to like look at it from every angle, and I think still it's probably like out of an F, no better than a D. But I don't know. What if it's mean? Like, is that the true definition? Because think about Tentacle. Tentacle, when it works, like when you got PD Parker on the other end of that tentacle, it looks so good. And then as soon as PD sees Mary Jane and gets butterflies in the stomach, starts looking real bad. So I think for now, I actually don't mind it there. Only use it if you know what you're doing. This is not for children. This is a 18 plus parental guidance required weapon right here. I was talking about Cleaver all day. Here we go. Okay. Previously an S tier. So we talk about bloat. bloat on turrets is real. Cleaver does probably like 15 different things. Cleaver is a bleeding source. Cleaver doesn't die. Cleaver hits the fist for the giant. So like, not only does it not die to the giant, it actually hits the giant's fist. Doesn't die to Hand of the King. One of the few turrets that actually hits Conjunctivious, assuming she dashes through it, which is pretty easy to do. It can have Poison Cloud. And this is all stuff that other turrets can do. It can have Poison Cloud. It can have bonus damage while you're near it. It can have bonus damage while you're away from it. It can have damage reduction. Let's say bonus damage while you're away from it. That doesn't exist. Like, forget I said that. It has damage reduction that you can get. It has, I think I said the Poison Cloud and the oil. It has self synergy. So if you get the Poison Cloud, it can deal bonus damage to poison. They also buffed bleeding, which gives that Dr. Pimple Popper that we talked about earlier. The monster just pops with enough bleeding. And then they buffed it even further because you used to have cleavers that have purple on it. And you're playing Brutality. And you're like, oh crap, I gotta pay $20,000 to reset this turret to get red. Or vice versa with tactics. So that's a buff. I'd say it's probably just behind Throwing Knife when it comes to best-in-class bleeding. The other thing that this gives you access to, and this might be some trade secrets, so like don't let this get out. It's like between me and you all. But when you're playing Brutality and you take the new support mutation, which is buffed so that it deals % bonus damage, it's almost a good idea to take support on bosses when you're running Cleaver. And that's because like Cleaver doesn't really get value off cooldown reduction. It's on an 8-second cooldown. It's actually the shortest cooldown of all the turrets because it also doesn't die. But the issue is that when you're playing like against the giant, where like maybe you kill one fist and you want to throw the Cleaver to the other fist, it's already back up. So that's really good. But when you take support at base value is almost like 15% by the time you get to the giant or Hand of the King. And 15% is like a full scroll compared to taking like, there's actually nothing you can take besides combo that would actually work in a boss fight. There'd be no reason to take open wounds because you have Cleaver. Unless you have like a plan to play full bleed. But I think you would probably get more value out of just taking support mutation. I think it's really good. So this is gonna stay as an S. Probably one of my favorite items in the whole game, TBH. All right, so next, Stun Grenade. Stun, previously a C, and that was because back in the day, I used to value Ice Grenade and Stun Grenade on the same level. And then remember, this is before Bad Seed. So if you look at this skill tier list, there's no Bad Seed mentioned. So in my opinion, Stun Grenade did the exact same thing as Ice Grenade. But then Bad Seed rolled around, and we got Tick Scythe, R&B, and they changed the scaling on Ice Grenade a little earlier than Bad Seed. But I actually think in most circumstances, you should probably take Ice Grenade over Stun Grenade. Ice Grenade has a bigger AoE. Ice Grenade has stuff like bleeding on Thaw. Ice Grenade also works with a really good mutation, which is Heart of Ice. And that's like where the Scythe, like top 3 survival build came from, was Scythe, Ice Grenade, Ice Armor, Heart of Ice. Anything that you can't kill with the Scythe, you throw a Ice Grenade first, and you get cooldown reduction on the Ice Grenade the entire game. And freezing, I can confirm freezing does work on bosses. We even did a fact check where we tested if freezing will stop the timekeeper, and we confirmed that it does. Damage doesn't. Oh, yeah, so you gotta think about like the fact that this does other stuff too, which is namely the bleeding and the slow. Stuff to say, I think this is where I ultimately land, is that I would prefer in a build that you all need something like an ice grenade or a stun grenade, that you probably take the ice instead. All right, next on the list, Grapple Hook. Previously a C tier. I actually don't mind Grapple Hook staying as a C. It did get the buff where you don't have to fish out for green or red ones, but really this thing, the Grapple Hook, never really had an issue with that. That's because like having 2 red scrolls when you're playing tactics isn't that terrible when your weapon is made for dealing like 1000% extra damage. Having those 2 scrolls, I think, is a non-factor. Where I don't like the Grapple Hook is in the new version 1.9, where you have rats. You try to hook, and you hook a rat, instead of like the 10 other rats behind it that I could have probably used a cluster grenade. It does stuff against Hand of the King, which was kind of cool. But come to find out, it also hits your wormettes, which is kind of weird. So like, it's a horizontal attack, and wormettes happen to be tall enough that it blocks it. And I know that's kind of nitpicky. Like, obviously, if you are running the Grapple Hook, just try to opt out of worms whenever you can try it. But I don't think it's like this good in the higher tiers. It's purple red now, correct? It used to be purple green, and I actually used to really like green grapple hooks because I could do stuff like green broadsword, where like I'm doing the horizontal, hit him with the hook, do the vertical. Maybe I'll have cooldown reduction, so maybe the hook will be back. It's probably not, but you'll get a stun on the vertical and then do the other vertical and get the kill, and that was cool and all. But when it comes to tactics builds, I think I'd rather have phaser or smoke bomb, and those still put you like kind of in danger. And then on bosses, this does have like little mini interrupts versus the Hand of the King. But when it comes to Hand of the King, I think I'd rather phaser behind him during the attack, or do like the as he's doing his down slam, you like double jump, he hits the ground, you phaser immediately on top of him, get in the hit from behind. Probably overall the damage is better and maybe a little safer. So I think I'm okay with this landing in the C tier. If you all are using it, definitely continue to do so. I think my real issue with the Grapple Hook is the fact that I can hook one monster that I didn't want, compared to taking like a grenade and clearing that small junk that I don't want to deal with the Grapple Hook. All right, so the Crushinator, previously a B tier. Crusher actually got buffed. Crusher now slows enemies inside of it.
What happened?
What difficulty does Susie play? She plays 4 BC. No, I think she does play 5. I think she has like 2 wins in 5 BC. But the issue is still Hand of the King. Like, Hand of the King is the #1 priority on beating 5 BC. Who's Susie? Susie is the hypothetical Switch player. She's the one who's on the bus, rocking out on Switch on the way to work. You might see her asking you, hey, have you seen this cool VeeDotMe vid on YouTube where he says to use Grapple Hook with the Sadist Stiletto? because the Grapple Hook has poison on hit. That's a good build right there. And then you put open wounds on the Sadist. Ooh. That's what Susie says, not me. I'm just repeating what I heard. But right now we're talking about Crusher. Crusher got buffed, which I think automatically throws it up into the A tier. I have had so many games where Crusher was the only reason why I won. Specifically like marksman bow games. Like games where you all tell me, the marksman bow is the best. You gotta use this thing. And it's like, it was only good because I dropped Crusher and Crusher kept the monster in check. I don't have it in the S rank though. And the reason why is what? Why would I not have this as an S? Like, taking this with like all of these items are like really good. But I think overall, the fact that it only hits 3 times on a 14-second cooldown, that's not terrible, to be honest. I think maybe, and we're talking bosses, like we're talking Hand of the King, Giant, Timekeeper, that kind of stuff. I think maybe if it hit those things more than 3 times, it would definitely be an S. Because it has like the crowd control built in, it has the slow, it has the stun, it probably gives you bonus damage while you're near it, it probably has the poison cloud, it can't be killed by monsters, it does a lot of stuff. But I think hitting Hand of the King 3 times might not be S tier territory. It's A tier because like Hand of the King may phase change after the 3 hits and you don't have to worry about it anymore. But if you happen to have a lack of DPS and it kept slamming them over and over again, that's an S. Next on the list, Root Grenade. Previously a C tier, filled the same niche as the stun and the ice, but what Root Grenade did was that it did damage. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure how long a Root Grenade lasts compared to these two. On like Hand of the King, Timekeeper, that kind of stuff. What sucks is that once Timekeeper's rooted by this and she gets out, she's out. Like there's no wolf trap that gives like another root, and there's no ice that has a thaw. It's a damaging mini stun. But I think if I had the ice grenade instead, I could kill everything the Root Grenade could kill, plus I have damage reduction, plus I have bleeding, and I don't know, it looks cooler. I don't know. Even though Root has new synergies, like there's a lot of new affixes where Root you can deal bonus damage to on your weapon, but I think you don't go for Root Grenade if you find that. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there is an Exodia build out there. I don't know. I don't want to play Root Grenades. Like, even though there might be some Exodia build out there where it's like double root synergies, I don't think I care. Like, unless it's Wolf Trap. Like, Wolf Trap, I'm doing that all day. But I wouldn't take another root. I would take a Giant Whistle if I were to do that. Giant Whistle, Heart of Ice, Wolf Trap with Nutcracker, a lot better than running Wolf Trap plus Root just to increase the damage of your Nutcracker. I don't think it's that good. Like, maybe there's a double Root with the new Repeater Crossbow, and like maybe that is a really good build, but I think I'd rather still use Wolf Trap and then either a Death Orb because I'm running cooldown reduction, or a Giant Whistle, or even not Heart of Ice, Ice Armor. To answer chat, what is the meaning of Exodia? Exodia is a boss monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! If you assemble all 5 pieces, which are cards, if you get all 5 cards in your hand, then you reveal it to your enemy and you win the game. It's a win condition compared to attacking the enemy's life points. And the best way to play Exodia, at least back in the day, was deep draw dragon Exodia using white stone of dragon, trade-in, super rejuvenation, cards that got banned at some point, to draw Exodia as fast as you can. There's no deep draw dragons in Dead Cells. But when you use the term Exodia in Dead Cells, it's to say that this build kills like everything, but it's a full build. It's not just like one single item. It's like every piece came together for like the perfect synergy. But Phaser previously, I think, was a B tier. No, previously an A tier. Wow. I had a lot of confidence back then. I don't think I have that much confidence anymore. And that's not to say that Phaser itself is bad or like my gameplay has changed in any capacity, but the monsters have changed. Remember, this is version 1.9. So you're fighting rats. You're fighting Oven Knights. And in most circumstances, like a single rat versus Phaser or a single Oven Knight versus Phaser is pretty good. And to be honest, it might just be the rats that's the problem. Because when you think about the samurai, the crab, you can get behind it. When you think about the mummy, you probably don't want to Phaser onto a mummy unless you know you can kill it. And then Oven Knights, obviously they're shielded from the front, and you just need to get behind it anyway. So the only issue are the rats. Like, if there's enough rats, guarantee you Phaser on top of it. What happens if you do it on the giant? You Phaser to his fists. But the real issue, FGG, is that if it's the eyeball, you could potentially Phaser to the fist even though his eyeball is out. And depending on the angle that you Phaser at, you may not land on his fist while the eyeball is out. So it may be a circumstance where you do the Phaser, you're like below the eye and you fall, or you do the Phaser and you're above the eye, which is perfect, which means you can land on the fist and then deal damage. But technically Phaser does work in that fight, it's just very deadly. Less important than the utility and open wounds application. I 100% agree about open wounds. Utility, again, that's like, I'm getting a little nervous when I'm recommending Phaser to you all. Would you take Phaser into Giant? It's like a wolf trap. If I could help it, no. But I would want the Phaser for Hand of the King. So that's like a little give and take there. I have to like know ahead of time that my gameplay against the Giant with the Phaser is solid. Whereas not Timekeeper, whereas Hand the King, like, it's a much better fit. So to keep this thing as an A, like, to be honest, I really don't, but nothing's changed with it. I guess like my priorities have changed, but open wounds, Phaser, Stiletto still works. You can get Phasers that apply oil on hit. That way you can have that burning oil. And when you look at like dealing damage with stuff like this, I do think it's better than Grapple Hook. It's just like a different kind of gameplay. And for all my 5BC players out there, Phaser is one of the best items versus the true boss. Because Phaser will actually interrupt the true boss's laser that shoots straight down. At any point in that attack, you can use the Phaser and he will drop to the floor. Like, guaranteed. I don't think I've had... That's not intended though. Shh. It's intended until the devs find out. As a matter of fact, I can't even imagine why they want to take that out. Come on. We blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that worked. All right, next on the list, Explosive Decoy. Previously a D tier, and the reason why, I'm gonna tell you all this like really easily. We used Explosive Decoy as a tactics, like Powerpro Grenade. They changed it. Back in the day, what it used to do was it used to just explode and then damage would be dealt, but then they made it so that little like bomblets fell to the ground, and the bomblets did a bunch of damage. And the damage it deals is actually really high. It's 22. No, wait, what? It doesn't say the number of bombs that get dropped? This is like kind of odd. If you see something you don't like, you activate the decoy and it should kill the monster. Almost no matter what the monster is. But then on 4BC, monsters teleport. And I think they've tried their absolute best to try to get the monsters to not do the wrong thing. But I actually don't think they've completely fixed it. So I think that the inconsistency, again, this was previously a D, the inconsistency of the invisibility combined with the long cooldown of 20 seconds had me to say, you know what, I don't really like this very much. I'll use it for a little while until I have something strong enough to kill an elite. Now we're on version 1.9. In version 1.9, skills do not reduce their own cooldowns. So back in the day, we used to like jump into a hallway, drop the explosive decoy, 20-second cooldown, it kills like 5 monsters and reduces its cooldown by like 5 seconds and goes down to 15 or even less. That got nerfed, so now it no longer reduces its own cooldown, which to me was like half of the real reason to use it, half of the appeal of the decoy, is that it was never actually a 20-second cooldown because it always killed the target. So it was always less than that. Now, again, this is a VeeDotMe tier list, so I would say if you enjoy the decoy, still use it. If I needed a poison cloud, which turrets do a lot, I think every other turret is better at poison cloud. If I need oil, this thing is actually really good at doing oil, really consistent. I think I get more value at like spinning the rerolls to get oil on this stuff. Or maybe you just opt out of doing oil. Like, I wouldn't sacrifice a slot for oil taking this. In all honesty, if I wanted oil as tactics, I could probably take a tonic, a smoke bomb. There's a couple new affixes that spread oil when the effect ends and requires you to not run this anymore. All right, let's keep it going because we're really getting slammed on time here. All right, so next on the list, Oil Grenade, dat oil, previously a B. Now, Oil Grenade is, in all honesty, probably my favorite grenade in the game. Like, when I take Oil Grenade, good things happen. Especially if you get the Oil Grenade that, like, does burning when the monster dies. You all of a sudden get a Oil Grenade that can kill everything in the hallway, because it happens to deal good damage by itself, and then if you get the kill, it ignites the hallway, which is like really good. If you don't have fire in the kit and you have a fire grenade, I think you should look for fire somehow, some way. This thing is purple red split. It does also suffer from the fact that it doesn't reduce its own cooldown. That's just on the initial explosion. Like, if you can get kills with your quick bow, or if you're running Instincto, because a lot of the oil stuff involves crits and things like that, I think it's probably super decent. And as I said, I think it's my favorite grenade in the game. Like, obviously you would want to pair oil and fire together, but if I had a build where I needed one or the other, half of you may say it's so easy to get oil, let's just get the fire grenade and call it a day. But maybe like a stronger build might have its own fire source, and you use the oil grenade, which has a bigger area than actually having to like land a hit for oil. The fire grenade with like spread oil on this, like comparing these two together, maybe that's the idea. I think I'd rather have the big oil, like BP, Exxon, big oil with the fire compared to small oil and fire. And the fact that this thing is like a huge area and actually kills monsters, I think that's like super cool. You like to run Firebrand plus the oil sword plus flamethrower plus the oil grenade? I do too. Big agree on that. And the reason why, compared to running just the oil sword plus the fire grenade, is that when you do the oil grenade with the Molotov, you now ignite the whole hallway. So it's not just a matter of like, it's this one spot of fire and like monsters might walk onto it. That oil goes super far and then it's glorious. Corrupted Cloud though. I've had a lot of people trying to convince me to run Corrupted Clouds, and I don't know why. Like, obviously there's people out there who are saying that Corrupted Cloud bleeds for 15 seconds. And 15 seconds of bleeding and poison is a long time. And that allows you to get like all kinds of cool synergies off your regular weapons. But when it comes to like 1.9, I could take a turret that does the poison and run support. Now, if the idea is, no, V, you're supposed to take a turret and support and Corrosive Cloud, and like all three of those together, like that's the perfect build. Then I'm wondering, like, if I'm playing Brutality or Melee, I might want Lacerating Aura instead. Like, almost screw the bleed, screw the 60%, if I can get a Lacerating Aura that's bonus to poison. If we're talking about, like, I would rather take the new Shock stuff. I would rather take, like, Wings of the Crow, Magnetic Grenade, etc. But again, Corrosive Cloud also doesn't work in biomes for the most part, because it doesn't follow you. It, to me, has the same issue that Death Orb has, where you use it, it might kill something in that specific room, but I can probably outpace it. I can activate it and then just go and leave it behind. And maybe that's what you're supposed to do. Maybe you're supposed to leave that, you know, little fart cloud in the room and then you like run away. But like, is that good in 4BC? Because the monsters just chase you. So like, unless it can pop those before they get to me, I don't know if that was as good as just Lacerating Aura. All right, next, the E-Door. E-Door, this is a bad seed item. Well, technically it's not, but we have never measured the E-Door before. Now, have I played a lot of the door? I have. I truly have. How do I use the door is a question I get a lot. Actually, let me, yeah. So we use the door in two ways. One, it is a burning oil initiator. Like, this thing gets you burning oil so easily, it's not even funny, because it can put oil on the ground and it can give you a burning when it gets destroyed. You can also get poison. You can also get other weird stuff. But for the most part, it's your burning oil maker. Is it better than running these two? Probably not. Does it do anything besides burning oil? It does. And like, this is, I could actually see myself getting flamed for this. Like, part of me wants to leave this as a B, because like, I just like the door, but like, will Susie get B rank gameplay out of this? Probably not. So the second way I use the door is as a stun grenade. The door is actually on a 10-second cooldown, so it's just a little shorter than stun grenade, which is on 12-second. And what you do is you throw it down and you roll through it, and it stuns whatever's behind it. The other thing that the door does is it screws up bosses. A little more than I would say Stun Grenade does. And that's, I don't want to say that's where you get into meme territory. Literally trolling right now. All right, there's a door. So Conjunctivious is a boss that you can use the door on very well. Even though I keep screwing it, let's go to the beginning. You can actually use the door to stop the tentacles in their tracks. Is that like B rank gameplay? Maybe not. It's like, this is what I'm talking about right here. And like, will this get patched eventually? It very well could. How does door work with War Javelin? You can throw stuff through an open door. I don't know if you would really want to. Yeah, see, you can attack through an open door, and it's not that bad. So like, the troll in me wants to have this as a B, but I don't want people to think that the door is somehow better than Ice Grenade, or somehow better than or like on par with these two turrets, because it's really not. So I think that's why it's a C, because when I take it, I do normally take it for the end of the game. So yeah, like I said, I think I'm gonna leave this as a C. That's probably not what most people would do, but this is the VeeDotMe tier list, so you know, we're trying to be a little fun with it. Gotta keep you all guessing. All right, Wormettes, previously an F tier. Wormettes got, I don't want to say they were nerfed, but Wormettes were best when you could run double Wormettes. Double Wormettes were actually kind of decent. Using one worm, the build was like, okay, maybe it's like a Hokuto build, where you just stand back and let the worms eat the monster. But you could run Cleaver and do that so much better. We thought, okay, maybe the perfect Wormette build is survival, where you're playing something like the Flint or the Giant Killer, and that way you toss Wormettes down and you are able to dance around the Wormettes and deal damage. But then like Crusher got buffed, where now any kind of gameplay as survival that you would use Wormettes with, you probably use Crusher instead. So in the end, I think Brutality worms are the only like real way to play it, in which you're probably better off using any other power, Lacerating Aura, Knife Dance, Corrupted Power, Magnetic Grenade. I actually think I prefer Magnetic Grenade over the Wormette, specifically for the shock. Like, the value of getting the shock DPS is probably higher than worms. Or like Fire Blast. I think that's another example where you have Wormettes that spread oil and you use Fire Blast and like get constant crits, but you may as well just use Oil Grenade with cooldown reduction. And you can use this often enough that it's probably better than worms. You believe all sources of worms are there, so you would be forced to spend money to get rid of them. That's a very interesting point. And this is a roguelike, so there is the idea that, you know, certain roguelikes, they do purposely make weapons worse to like curve the direction that the player can go. But I actually think Dead Cells doesn't do that. I think the devs said that they want every item to be at least decently viable. Alright, so next on the list, Lacerating Aura, previously an S tier. S tier because the Lacerator was bloated. Again, we're using that word. So technically it only does one thing at base value, but when you were running Hunter's Instinct, where the Lacerator reduces its own cooldown on kill, and it also gave you Rally. So if you get hit while you have the Lacerator up, you can also get your health back with the Lacerator. And they nerfed both of those. You no longer get the health, you no longer get the cooldown reduction. So that's automatically not an S to me anymore. It was an S because it did a lot of stuff. What Lacerator is really good at is just ambient damage around yourself if you have affixes. So it's almost like you pair it with this and it becomes really good. But it still kills biome monsters pretty well, especially once you get like your speed up. Not like the literal speed up in the game, but once you get better at the game, I think Lacerator gets better over time. But it hits a wall. And that wall was, we removed cooldown reduction from the Lacerator. And that was like where you went to the next level. So I think it's better than Corrupted. I think it's better than Knife Dance, even though you do pair it with Knife Dance. I think it's better than Grenades, better than Grapple, better than everything in the D tier. It's just no longer as good as it used to be. And I would, yes, take an Oil Grenade over it. Would I take a Phaser over it? Maybe not. It depends on the kind of build I'm going for. But the S-rank stuff, absolutely. But typically, you would want to pair, like, best case scenario, you pair this stuff with the Lacerator. Wave of Denial was also nerfed, where it doesn't reduce its own cooldown. Previously, we had this as an S tier. I do think it loses a point via brokenness. But Wave of Denial is actually still a really good ability. It's not quite as bloated as it used to be. It's actually really good at interrupting boss attacks. So you're talking Hand of the King, Mama Tick. This thing blows Mama Tick out the water. Literally, it blows her out of the water. It's good. What it doesn't do is it doesn't deal damage. So it's almost like pure utility, unless you're in a biome where it does kill stuff. And we don't really run Wave of Denial with Hunter's Instinct anymore. Now it's all about like using this in a melee setup. But if you did run it with Quick Bow, if you did run it with Nerves of Steel, it's completely fine. And at that point, you can run Hunter's Instinct, and you get that CDR. And it's actually still good. Would I take it over Lacerator? Yes. But it's super build dependent. So I think I'm gonna keep it as an A tier. You probably want to think about, like, if you aren't comfortable dealing damage to bosses, you might want to toss this for this. Like, when it comes to win rate, I think, like, ideally you would take these two together. But really, you should be looking for these two together. Or even these two together. It's all good. But, like, if I were to measure both of these together... Alright, let's keep it going. Wings of the Crow. This item, previously an F tier. Now, this is one, honestly, a lot of people were waiting for this one. Is this the new super promotion? This is like Rags to Riches story, where, like, you started off just selling junk out your garage, and now you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. We talk about bloat. What does the Wings of the Crow do? It gives you flight. And remember, flight in roguelikes is normally, like, really good. Most monsters in this game can't really interact with anything in the sky. It also has a dash mechanic to it. So if you press circle, you do this really long dash that's longer than your normal dodge roll. Dodges through spikes, dodges through bullets, dodges like Neo. You can just go through everything. And then, not only does it deal damage below you if you're in the sky that applies the shock, if you, and a lot of people may not know this, if you drop to the ground, all of your attacks will inflict shock. So in that circumstance, the only thing that makes this remotely bad to me, remember, there's a VeeDotMe tier list, is that there's a gameplay requirement to it. You have to actually get your pilot license to run this thing. And if you don't, because it's a tactics only weapon, you could actually die by running into spikes or getting shot out of the sky with Wings the Crow. Now, what I would recommend is for anyone out there training themselves on how to be a pilot, you rock Masochist, which is this thing here, used to be called Tough Nut. What it does is it reduces damage dealt by spikes and other hazards. And then you run that until, like, not to say it's training wheels, because a lot of people run this on every build. Like, there's no time they don't run Masochist. And in that circumstance, you're probably all set to play Wings the Crow. Alright, next. Great Owl of War. Previously an S tier. The Owl was known as being the elite predator when it comes to the giant. Like, you fight the giant, all you want to do is take an owl, and it's an automatic win. And for the most part, that's still the case. It's just not as free as it used to be. So that's one nerf. But I would say that nerf isn't enough to take it out of the S bracket. The only nerf that could be is the one where it doesn't reduce its own cooldown. And that is kind of unfortunate because that let you spam the active enrage on the owl. But I think all the owl builds, you're probably running Hunter's Instinct in like a bow build. I don't know if there's people out there rocking the owl melee. It works, like I've done it before. It clashes with Apex Predator though, so you don't go invisible if you're running the owl. So I think overall you should still take owl and still run it the same with Hunter's Instinct with a bow build, and it's still S rank territory. It's probably about the same gameplay requirement as the Crow's Feather, but again, when it comes to learning the game, once you learn how to kill stuff at maximum range without getting in danger, this owl will carry you through. Like, think about Moros, think about Arboretum, think about Corrupted Prison, all those maps where, like, a lot of ways you can get hit at any point. From any direction, you have stuff dropping from the sky on you. If you can get past that gameplay, this is the weapon that you want to take. And so is this. And so is this. And these two, they're all really good. Alright, Ice Armor. Previously a B tier. Ice Armor technically got buffed. And the buff was they're gonna remove all the scrolls from all the weapons. Back in the day, we used to dream about purple ice shields. Like, I want to play Ice Armor so bad, but I can't because I'm gonna lose 2 purple scrolls if I take it. They got rid of that. So now you can take Ice Armor anytime you want, any color you want. And it does technically the same thing every single time. And in that circumstance, I think it's probably super good. But I don't know if I, like... So I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm playing Tactics, and I'm using a support turret build, do I really want this in the other slot? Or do I want more damage? And I think I don't necessarily need more damage. Living allows me to deal more damage, which is really good. So I like that aspect. As Brutality, I'm probably gonna take Tonic over the Ice Armor. Of course, Ice Armor allows you to get the no-hit, compared to Tonic, that doesn't if you actually do get hit. But Tonic does a lot more things than Ice Armor does. But Ice Armor, when we're talking like win rate, would I take it over a lot of this stuff here? I probably would, but only if I have the other items solidified. So you can actually take it with like everything, like not quite to say a Hokuto bow. Hokuto does stuff on its own that Ice Armor doesn't really compare to, and Hokuto is an S. So the only thing Ice Armor doesn't do is kill, which makes me feel like it can probably be in the A tier. All right, Light Speed. Previously a D tier, Light Speed right now is like probably the premier speedrunner weapon next to the Javelin. Besides that, it doesn't really do much, especially since they got rid of the Hunter's Instinct interaction. I do think that this is better than Tornado. I think this is better than Worms, kinda. But I don't think I use these things anymore. And maybe because we're on 1.9 now, and scrolls aren't tied to weapons, so it's like, why would I use this as a dodge mechanic when I can just run the Ice Armor or Tonic? If I need speed, like if I'm not a speed runner, I could just run Wings of the Crow, which kills bosses. This is like a get out of jail card, but so is like most of the stuff up here. This, Grapple Hook, Stun Grenade as tactics, Ice Grenade, Door. I would rather take a Door than Light Speed. Is that bad to say? And like, theoretically, I love this thing, but I have almost no reason to take it. So let's keep that as an F. If you all are speedrunners, you're absolutely taking it. If you're not a speedrunner, there's so many better items right now. I don't see the reason to use it. Next on the list, Giant Whistle, Giganto Whistle. Previously an A tier. A because I liked it better than like every other survival power. And back then, there wasn't really a lot of options. When it comes to win rate, I think that it's still good. It's probably better than powerful. Better than Death Orb, I would say. Obviously, my opinion. I'd still rather use it over all of that. But there's not a lot of other green items to compare it to. So, like, keeping it symmetrical, I like having the Giant Whistle in the B slot. It might be the pick. It usually is the pick though, like not gonna lie. So I'm gonna pray that there's other B items in here, because there's almost no circumstance where the Giant Whistle wasn't the right choice. Compared to say like the Powerpro Grenade, where like I should have taken the Giant Whistle instead. All right, next is the Teloric Shock. Previously an A tier. I actually considered Teloric Shock to be the premier weapon that you take while while survival. Survival, you would take it because survival didn't have a lot of wave clear. It's only Powerful Grenade, but I do like it better than Powerful Grenade. So you took this with like a broadsword, and anything, any hallway you couldn't clear, you just dive punch in. And it was like super good. In 1.9, I think it's still like about as good in survival, but maybe like priority wise, not what you would take. I'm just trying to keep an eye out here. I think Heart of Ice builds are better, like overall. I think if you need wave clear, it's probably still better than this. It just doesn't do anything on bosses for the most part. So at that point, like let's say you're running Giant Killer. The Giant Killer is the boss killer. And your like biome clear is coming from the Teloric Shock with Killer Instinct. And I think that's the right way to play it, but whether that is like A rank territory, maybe not. So we're gonna keep it as a B and then move on. I would like you all to continue using Teloric Shocks with Killer Instinct, but definitely let me know if the cooldown doesn't work as well as it used to. All right, next on the list, Smoke Bomb. Another bad seed weapon. We have never measured bad seed weapon on tier list before. I actually really like Smoke Bomb. I really do. As melee tactics, I think it's probably one of the best skills you can take. It gives you bonus damage on your next attack. It gives you damage reduction. And it also gives you that invisibility. And you would think the invisibility would be like the #1 thing that it does, but in my opinion, the #1 thing is that it does bleeding, it does poison. I think it's better than Corrosive Cloud. Like, to be perfectly honest, I would rather have this over Corrosive Cloud. I think overall that like 1000% bonus damage is better than Corrosive. And then what it also does, for those who don't know, the Smoke Bomb actually has crowd control in it. It does a knockback. So you jump in, you like throw the Smoke Bomb down, the Kage Bushin straight down. I guess that's what Dokumori. That's smoke and poison. But you toss the Dokumori down. Someone please let me know if that's the right word. And it will actually do a knockback and Hand the King interrupted. Spoiler Boss interrupted. Timekeeper interrupted. It's really good against Mama Tick too. You take this with Instincto. You do some real stuff with it. And because you're playing tactics, you know, you get survivability in there. Last on the list, the Mushroom Boy. So yeah, definitely use your Smoke Bombs. It is not just meme worthy, only for invisibility. Use that thing and you spam it. And it's gonna actually look really good. All right, last on the list, the Mushroom Boy. Mushroom Boy, another bad seed weapon, non-existent before this tier list. A lot of people would say, you know, you should compare it to the Owl. Anything that the Owl can do, the Mushroom Boy can probably do. And while that's on paper, it might sound correct, versus bosses, it's not. So I know this is a tactics weapon, this is a survival weapon, but when it comes to like measuring S tier, like why is this an S tier? I don't think it's quite there with the Boy. Now, would I take Giant Whistle over Mushroom Boy? Yes, but I would prefer to put these two together. But when it comes to the Crusher, measuring these three together, I'd rather take Crusher Giant Whistle compared to Boy Crusher or Boy Whistle. So I think, and this might be a little controversial too, I think I would bring the Mushroom Boy down. And that's not because the Mushroom Boy is bad. Again, B rank might be the pick. You see that boy, you absolutely think about him as hard as you can. But I think for like win rate goals, your goals should be up here somewhere. Your goal should be either Heart of Ice Scythe or Crusher Giant Whistle. Outside of that, I would still use this thing. I use it all the time. It's better than a D because it can actually take you all the way through to the final boss, but you're probably gonna want to do an upgrade at some point, and those upgrades are A tier and S tier weapons. I would take it over Death Orb. I would probably take it over Powerpro Grenade, and absolutely over Root Grenade. Wow, phew. That was tough. I used a lot of calories today. I feel like the demotions were relatively under control, but a lot of stuff got promoted into the higher tiers, which I am really glad to see. But I think that's a lock-in. As I start to lose my voice, as my trachea becomes inflamed. I think we're saving this one. Game and type now. I am spent, but I actually really like this list. I feel like my center 4 right here is a little contestable, but everything else, like the outer square, I feel really good about. And that's it. That is a successful tier list. Am I gonna do a mutation one? Historically, I have chosen not to do mutations decks, and that's because there's too much personal preference. A lot of my good friends only use Masochist, Gastro, Disengage every single game, and they would say that's S tier for them. Like, there's no reason to use other mutations if I can't die. But for me, like, I focus a lot on like that specific build at that specific time, and I try to adjust towards it. And I don't think everyone plays that way, so I can't really do a mutation tier list because of that.